Well, a very good Wednesday evening to everyone live with us in the Zoom classroom and watching us on YouTube in the live stream. If you're watching us at a later time, well, obviously it's not Wednesday night, but you know that. Hi, I'm Gary, ham radio call sign Whiskey 4, Echo Echo Yankee, W4EEY, and this is it. This is the culmination of all of our efforts in this ham radio upgrade class. We've been studying to take the general class, a 35-question multiple choice test, and we've been using this book, the American Radio Relay League License Manual, the 10th edition, and we've completed it. And tonight what we're going to be doing is together as a group taking some practice tests together. To give us a chance to see how our strengths and weaknesses are. So we're going to be taking practice test number 5 tonight. That doesn't make any sense, but okay, we've taught this class with this question pool once before. We have 3 practice tests from that class. We took a practice test last week, number 4. So 5 and 6 tonight. So then you'll have 6 practice tests from here that you could use to do studies. And also, we want you to use the American Radio Relay League exam review website to take tests. And if you look at the exam review website, you'll see this chart. It just tells us there are 429 questions in the question pool. And just doing some simple math, if I divide 429 by 35, that's 12.26 tests if there were no repeats. But there are repeats on the test. So I want you to be taking at least 13 to 15 practice tests before you go to take your actual test, so that you get a chance to see all of the test questions. And what we want you to do tonight is please get a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. We'll be numbering the sheet maybe as you go along, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 35. And then write down A, B, C, or D, what you think the right answer is. Note these are the actual questions and the actual answers that you will see on your test. Just the answers will not be in the same order. So I do not want you memorizing A, B, C, or D. That's not going to help. But I want you to be thinking about what is the right answer and why. And as we did last week, I'll present the questions to you. Just let me know if I go too fast in switching the questions, or you want me to slow down, or if you can't read something. Then when we go back to look at the answers, I'll read the question and answers for those who might be visually impaired, because we do have folks that actually just listen to the class, so that works out okay. So, and also I ask for those who are taking the test with your cameras on, if you would raise your hand when you're done answering that question. It helps me to know when I can go on to the next one. So please keep calm. You can do it. And here is, for the first practice test, here is question number 1. And now here's question 2. Question 3. And there is no time limit when you actually take your test, but this is TV, so we kind of move along. Here's question 4. And question number 5. And question 6. question 7. And question number 8. And question 9. And here's question 10. Question 11. We can always go back. Question 12.
Gary, when you get a chance, could you go back to 11?
Okay, let me go back to 11 right now. We can do this also at the end, but here's 11. All right, moving on to 12. We can still come back to it, it's no problem. And now question 13. Question number 14. And question 15.
Hey, can you do 14 again?
Yeah, sure, we'll go back to 14.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, 15. And now 16. And here is question 17. And question 18. And now question 19. And question 20. And here is question 21. And question 22. Question 23. And question 24. And question 25. And question 26. And question 27. Next up is 28. And question 29. Here is question 30. And question 31. And here we have question 32. And now question 33. And question 34. And question 35. So if you're in the Zoom classroom and there's a question you'd like me to go back to, just unmute and let me know. Charlie?
32, please.
32. There you go. If you're watching us on YouTube in the live stream, you could put a question number in the chat and I'll go back to that.
Thanks.
Yeah, any other questions? Anyone else? All right, let's see how we did. How did we do? So question 1, what is the solar flux index? It's a measure of solar radiation with a wavelength of 10.7 centimeters, 1B. And 2, which of the following are objectives of the Volunteer Monitor Program? To encourage amateur radio operators to self-regulate and comply with the rules, 2B. And 3, how close to the upper edge of a band's phone segment should your displayed carrier frequency be when using 3 kilohertz wide upper sideband? At least 3 kilohertz below the edge of the band, 3C. And 4, what is meant by the term MMIC? That's a monolithic microwave integrated circuit, 4B. And 5, which of the following is an advantage of an oscilloscope versus a digital voltmeter? Complex waveforms can be measured, 5B. And 6, what must you do if your station fails to meet the FCC exposure exemption criteria? Well, the answer is perform an RF exposure evaluation in accordance with FCC OET Bulletin 65, 6B. This question might not even be on the test anymore because we don't have exemption criteria anymore. All right, 7, what is the purpose of the notch filter found on many HF transceivers? To reduce interference from carriers in the receiver passband, 7D. And 8, in what units is RF feed line loss usually expressed? Decibels per 100 feet, 8B. And 9, what is the approximate maximum distance along the Earth's surface normally covered in one hop using the F2 region? That's 2,500 miles, 9B. And 10, what portion of the AC cycle is converted to DC by a full wave rectifier? That would be 360 degrees, 10C. And 11, what is the capacitance of a 20 microfarad capacitor connected in series with a 50 microfarad capacitor You can do the math. There is a formula, but Dave gave us the hint to take something smaller than the smallest value, but not drastically so. So the answer is 14.3 microfarads, 11D. And 12, how many watts of electrical power are consumed if 400 volts DC is supplied to an 800 ohm load? This you probably would need to do some math, and the answer is 200 watts, 12A. Also notice, I haven't pointed this out, but on the very bottom right you'll see page numbers. This is the page number in our book that this question refers back to. 13, what is the purpose of neutralizing in an amplifier? To eliminate self-oscillations, 13D. And 14, how does antenna gain in dBi compare to gain stated in dBd for the same antenna? So we're comparing isotropic to a dipole, and the gain in dBi is 2.15 dB higher. 14C. And 15, what is the minimum age that one must be to qualify as an accredited volunteer examiner? 18 years old, 15D. And 16, when sending CW, what does a C mean when added to the RST report? Readability, strength, and tone. Best you can get is 599. Well, a C means a chirpy or unstable signal, 16A. And 17, what is an advantage of batteries with low internal resistance? If it has low resistance, you can get high discharge current, 17A. And 18, what is the primary use of a beverage antenna? No, you can't drink it. It's directional receiving for medium frequency and low HF bands, 18C. And 19, what is a characteristic of a random wire HF antenna connected directly to your transmitter? While your station equipment may carry significant RF current, you may actually get a shock by touching the equipment, 19B. And 20, what is the approximate open circuit voltage from a fully illuminated silicon photovoltaic cell? That's half a volt, 0.5 volts DC, 20D. And 21, which HF bands have segments exclusively allocated to amateur extra class licensees? That would be 80 meters, 40 meters, 20 meters, and 50 meters, what I call the old timers bands. 21C. And how are the two separate frequencies of a frequency shift keyed signal identified? The mark and space tones, mark and space, 22D. And which of the following is a common location for FT8? Approximately 14.074 to 14.077 megahertz. 23A. And 24, why is it important to know the duty cycle of the mode you are using when transmitting? Well, some modes have high duty cycles that could exceed a transmitter's average power rating, 24A. It'll be in the instruction manual for the radio. And 25, under what conditions are state and local governments permitted to regulate amateur radio structures? That's the long answer. Amateur service communications must be, here's the phrase, reasonably accommodated, and regulations must constitute the minimum practical to accommodate a legitimate purpose of the state or local entity, 25B. And 26, what is the maximum symbol rate permitted for RTTY or data emission transmissions on the 10-meter band? 10-meter band is the dividing line, 1200 baud. Below 10 meters, it's 300 baud. Above 10 meters, it's even higher, but 1200 baud on 10 meters, 26C. And 27, when selecting a CW transmitting frequency, what minimum separation from other stations should be used? 150 hertz to 500 hertz would be fine, 27C. And 28, what output is produced by a balanced modulator? Double sideband suppressed carrier, double sideband modulated RF, 28B. And then you put a filter after it to get either the upper or lower sideband. And 29, why should soldered joints not be used in lightning protection ground connections? Well, a soldered joint will likely be destroyed by the heat of a lightning strike, 29B. And 30, which ionospheric region is closest to the surface of the Earth? That's the D layer, 30A. And 31, which of the following conditions will cause a ground fault circuit interrupter to disconnect AC power? Current flowing from one or more of the hot wires directly to ground. You want it actually flowing through the neutral, so 31C. And 32, what type of modulation varies the instantaneous power level of the RF signal? That's amplitude modulation, 32B. And 33, which mode is most commonly used for voice communications on the 17 and 12 meter bands? They're above 9 megahertz, so it's upper sideband, 33A. And 34, how does a capacitor react to AC? As the frequency of the applied AC increases, the reactance decreases, 34D. And 35, under what circumstances are messages that are sent via digital modes exempt from third-party rules? They're not, under no circumstances, 35A. So did you have 26 right? Or no more than 9 wrong? Well, you can get there. You're going to get there. You're doing fine. This is normal. This is a process you're going through, but we're going to get you ready. So what I want you to do right now is to pat yourself on the back, get up, move around, get something to drink, stretch. Let's take a 5-minute intermission, and we'll come back and take our final practice test together. want you to know you're doing great. Even if you didn't pass that last practice test and you're scratching your head going, will I ever get it? Yes, you will. Just to keep going, keep taking the practice tests, reviewing the material. You'll have what we call aha moments. You'll go, that's what he was talking about. So if we didn't express it clearly the first time, maybe over time it'll pop up. Your motivation, though, is the key. So let's continue here. We're going to take practice test number 6. This will be the last practice test that we'll take together for this class. And again, we want a piece of paper and a pencil. We'll be numbering from 1 to 35. And as I said before, you can do it. So let's go ahead and get started. Oh, and you can do better than the instructor on this one. A little motivation there for you. Here is question 1. And question 2. All right, got some folks looking intently. Okay, question 3. And now question 4. And here we have question 5. And here we have question 6. And question 7. And now question 8. And here is question 9. And now question 10. And question 11. question 12. And question 13, we can always go back to any of these. And question 14. And question 15. And question 16. And question 17. And now question 18. Here is question 19. And question 20. And here's question 21. And now question 22. And question 23. question 24. And now question 25. And here is question 26. And 27. And here we go with question 28. And question 29. And here we have question 30. And here is question 31. And question 32. And question 33. And question 34. And now question 35. So are there any questions you'd like me to go back to? Just unmute and let me know.
Could we redo number 33?
Absolutely. There's 33. And when you're taking your test, there's no time limit, so you'll pace yourself.
Gary, can you go back to number 2?
Of course. Take me a little bit to get there because I don't have a Fast forward.
Quite all right.
There's 2.
Could we see number 9 again?
Of course. There's number 9.
Can you go back to 35, please?
You were kind of muffled. I couldn't understand. What did you say?
Can you go back to 35, please?
25.
35.
35.
35.
35. There we go. There's 35.
And could we see number 23 again when
Yes.
she's through?
Are we all good with 35? Okay. So 23. Anything else? Happy to do it, no problem. Okay. Let's see how we did. Let's see if you can get the one that I missed. So here is answer number 1. Which of the following is the purpose of a beacon station? That's observation of propagation and reception. 1D. This test actually was created by the ARRL exam review website, so they're current. I just took them a few days ago. Question 2, how can you avoid harmful interference on an apparently clear frequency before calling CQ? Well, if you're on CW, send QRL question mark followed by your call sign, or if using phone, ask if the frequency is in use followed by your call sign. That's 2B. And 3, what is the unit used to measure reactance? The ohm, 3B. And 4, what is a possible effect of a resonant ground connection? High RF voltages on the enclosures of station equipment. This is when the ground lead is a quarter of a wavelength long at a particular frequency, and it appears like it's not even there. 4A. And 5, what is the benefit of using the opposite or reverse sideband when receiving CW? It may be possible to reduce or eliminate interference from other signals. 5C. And 6, what is one disadvantage of using a shortened mobile antenna as opposed to a full-size antenna? The operating bandwidth may be very limited. 6D. And what causes HF propagation conditions to vary periodically in a 26 to 28 day cycle? That's because of the rotation of the sun's surface layers around its axis. 7B. And 8, on which amateur frequencies in the 10-meter band may stations with a general class control operator transmit CW emissions. CW or Morse code can be used over the entire band. It's always allowed, so 8C. And 9, what is a characteristic of a half-wave rectifier in a power supply? A half-wave rectifier, only one diode is required, 9D. And 10, which of the following describes full break-in CW operation, also known as QSK? Transmitting stations can receive between their transmitted code characters and elements, 10C. And 11, which of the following components should be added to a capacitor to increase capacitance? Another capacitor in parallel, 11A. And 12, what is the name of the process that changes the instantaneous frequency of an RF wave to convey information? If you're changing frequency, it's frequency modulation, 12C. And 13, what is the maximum symbol rate permitted for RTTY or data at frequencies below 28 megahertz, 300 baud, 13A. And 14, what symptoms may result from other signals interfering with a Pactor or Vera transmission? Long pauses in message transmission, frequent retries or timeouts, failure to establish a connection. All of those choices are correct, 14C. And 15, which of the following are objectives of the Volunteer Monitor Program? To encourage amateur radio operators to self-regulate and comply with the rules, 15A. And 16, which parameter affects receiver sensitivity? Well, all of these do. Demodulator stage bandwidth, input amplifier gain, and input amplifier noise figure all contribute to the receiver's sensitivity. So 16B. And 17, in free space, how does the gain of two 3-element horizontally polarized Yagi antennas spaced vertically a half wavelength apart typically compare to the gain of a single 3-element Yagi? 2 antennas times 2, it's approximately 3 dB higher, 17C. And 18, what percentage of power loss is equivalent to a loss of 1 dB? That's about 20% loss, so 18C, 20.6%. And 19, until an upgrade to general class is shown in the FCC database, when must a technician licensee identify with AG after their call sign? Whenever they operate using general class frequency privileges, 19D. Was there a question? No, okay, heard a comment. 20, what standing wave ratio results from connecting a 50 ohm feed line to a 200 ohm resistive load? Remember, the bigger number is always in the front, so it's going to be a 4-to-1 ratio, 4-to-1 standing wave, 20A. And 21, which of the following antenna types will be most effective as a near vertical incident skywave antenna for short skip communications on 40 meters? Well, a horizontal dipole placed close to the ground, so between 1/10 and 1/4 wavelength above the ground, 21A. And 22, what is the effect of modulation duty cycle on RF exposure? So duty cycle is talking about transmitter time, and a lower duty cycle permits greater power levels to be transmitted, 22C. And 23, what frequency range is occupied by a 3 kilohertz lower sideband signal when the displayed carrier frequency is set to 7.178? So that's going to be the top end, and the bottom end is going to be at 7.175. So 7.175 to 7.178 megahertz, 23D. And 24, generally, who should respond to a station in the contiguous 48 states calling CQDX? any station outside the lower 48 states, 24B. And 25, according to the National Electrical Code, what is the minimum wire size that may be used safely for wiring with a 20 amp circuit breaker? That would be American wire gauge number 12, 25B. And 26, which of these classes of amplifier has the highest efficiency? Class C, so 26C. And 27, what is the total bandwidth of an FM phone transmission having 5 kilohertz deviation and 3 kilohertz modulating frequency? It's Carson's rule. What you do is you add 5 plus 3 is 8 times 2, 16 kilohertz, 27A. And 28, which of these connector types is commonly used for low frequency or DC signal connections to a transceiver? That's the RCA phono plug, 28B. And 29, which ionospheric region is closest to the surface of the Earth? That is the D region, 29A. And 30, this is the one I didn't read thoroughly. Which of the following conditions require a licensed amateur radio operator to take specific steps to avoid harmful interference to other users or facilities? Well, it's all of these when operating within 1 mile of an FCC monitoring station, when a station is transmitting spread spectrum, and when using a band where the amateur service is secondary. So we want you to read the full question and then read all of the answers. Don't go ahead like I did and find a correct answer and say, that's it. So 30A. And 31, which of the following statements is true about PSK 31? Well, PSK 31 uses Veracode, and uppercase letters use longer Veracode bit sequences and thus slow down transmission, 31C. 32, which of the following is characteristic of low voltage ceramic capacitors? They're cheap, comparatively low cost, 32B. And 33, what does MUF stand for? It is the maximum usable frequency for communications between 2 points, 33D. And 34, why do voltmeters have high input impedance? It decreases what we call the loading on circuits being measured, 34D. And 35, what is a characteristic of a random wire HF antenna connected directly to the transmitter? We saw this in the earlier test. Station equipment may carry significant RF current, and you might burn your hand with an RF burn if you touch your transmitter case, so 35A. So again, no more than 9 wrong, and you will have passed. Smiling faces, thumbs up. Let me go ahead and remove the spotlight. Any comments or questions? Oh, 10, that's no good. Got to get one more. So Dave Ivey is here with us from his home over in Spartanburg. Dave, did you have any final comments for the class tonight?
No, I just appreciated you all. We've had some very good questions along the way and emails and during the class, and you've just been a very wonderful group, and we appreciate you very much, and we want to hear from you when you pass your test.
You've got our emails, w4eey@arrl.net. Welcome your questions or comments.
Gary?
Yes, we're still here for you. Charlie, go ahead.
I want to make words of wisdom for the upcoming class of generals. You know, I passed my general test back in, I don't want to say. And if I could pass it, coming from the construction firefighter field that I was in, and no knowledge of electronics, if I could pass it, you guys could pass it.
You will pass. You can do it.
If you paid attention at least to the pictures and slept through half of Gary's class, You know, it would.
And now we
God,
can't get rid of this guy. You know, he
Yeah,
comes back
thank
and just
you.
sits in on the class. So
Yeah.
we will
But
have an
anyway,
extra
my
class.
serious, what my serious point is, don't rush off. Go with the right answer. Go back over the test, and then submit the test.
You can do it, absolutely. The longest answer may be the right one, and when in doubt, answer C. I
Well, you
don't know
know,
if that's legit or
it
not,
could
but
be
anyway.
the shortest one too.
Yeah. Okay. Any other final comments? I've appreciated having you here in the class. We want to hear you on the bands now. Find a good local ham club. So for the last time, we will have an extra class starting in September if you're interested, so you can write us about that, or you can watch the videos that we have up on YouTube already. Both Dave and I are going to be at the Dayton Ham Fest coming up next month. So if you're going to be in Dayton, please look for us. Until then, see you on the bands.
73.
73, y'all.
Thanks for the help. Thanks a million. Great class.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, bye.